Why do you want to keep that trash, little bitchy? Leave it here, or better yet, throw it in the river. Like this, she says, pitching my empty food cans into the slough. They're my snorkel rods, I say as I peel off the tape that holds them together. I use them to survive the sun throbs. If you keep lying to me, you'll regret it. I don't like liars. She takes a threatening step toward me. I'll use them as a crutch, I say, demonstrating by staggering around using the snorkel rods as my third point of support. I can't walk on my left foot that was in the trap. If I don't have a crutch, I'll have to crawl. Or will you carry me? I carry you. For a second, I see what looks like a flash of humor in her eyes. If you ever become such a burden, it will be back to the river to finish the job. She takes up my backpack. What I call home is about a mile north of here. Madame, mistress, what should I call you? Your worst nightmare, Mario. We pass beneath several more bridges, from two of which dangle the rotting remains of suicides. Don't mind them, says Mario. They're always hanging around. Ha ha. I limp along, leaning heavily on my 4 snorkel rods. Marielle almost objected when I pulled the other 2 from the bush, but I demonstrated that they prove more support than just 2. I can tell my slow pace irritates her. She slows down from time to time to let me catch up. We stay back from the recreational trail that follows the Sammamish Slough through Redmond to avoid encountering the wandering bands that sometimes use the trail. The ornamental features of the trail are disappearing, reclaimed by the wilderness. Deteriorating apartment complexes line the banks. By the way, did you see any fish thieves in the river while you were testing out my trap? There were 2 loudmouths that passed me last night. One of them was walking up the river. Poaching bastards, says Marielle. They stole a couple of my fishing nets. We come to a subdivision of modest homes near the river. They're abandoned, of course, and in the usual decrepit condition. We arrive at one that has severe fire damage. The second floor is in shambles, the first not much better. Home sweet home, says Marielle. Max, I'm home. Come see what I found. Does Marielle live with a man? That could be good or bad, but probably bad. There's a stirring in the clump of overgrown brush near the trail, and a very old, limping black Labrador retriever with an ancient graying muzzle emerges. Oh my god! I think my heart will stop beating. Doggy, I cry, dropping the snorkel rods and hopping up to the dog who eyes me suspiciously. Dropping to my hands and knees, I crawl towards him. He growls and raises his hackles, but I'm hugging him before he decides how he wants to respond to this pushy stranger. He soon senses my goodness, as all dogs do, and allows my caresses, hugs, ear scratching, and forepaw rubbing with a few kisses thrown in. He looks at me patiently as I babble all sorts of nonsense. I even forget for a moment that Max's mistress nearly murdered me less than an hour ago. I became gentler as I feel the limps and tumors of old age under his coat. A large, dry tongue comes out and licks my cheek, and with that, our friendship is sealed. Suddenly recalling Marielle and her unpredictable behavior, I glance around to locate her. She stands regarding me with her usual unreadable expression. You're lucky Max likes you, she says. He's a sure judge of human character. If he didn't like you, it would be back to the river with you. She drops down next to me and shoulders me to the side. Max's old tail wags a mile a minute as she sinks to the grass and hauls him onto her lap. He covers her face with his licking. Marielle smiles, her forbidding face relaxing into a look of happiness. It's surprising how transforming the smile is. No doubt, Marielle was quite a beauty in her time before the cataclysm played havoc with her personal appearance. I bristle at her implied threat. She likes to say that. She's holding all the cards. Whether she's serious, trying to keep me in my place, or just using the expressionless dark humor, I find it offensive. As soon as my foot is better, I'll get the hell away from her. Even though I'll have to say goodbye to my new friend, Max. Marielle fishes and traps for a living. She has fishing nets strung along about a 2-mile stretch of the Sammamish Slough. About a mile north of here... Oh, indigestion. Marielle fishes and traps for a living. She has fishing nets strung along about a 2-mile stretch of the Sammamish Slough. About a mile north of her makeshift home is a point that she considers the limit of her territory. Someone else has fishing rights from that point on. She's locked in a never-ending strife with poachers who recognize no entitlement to the river. There are 3 poachers in particular whom she holds a grudge against. They will not fare well if they fell into her power. Her traps catch very little game because there's very little game to catch. I think their true purpose is to catch poachers. Marielle doesn't say much but lets me chat away. I'm not sure whether she listens or ignores me. I'm not sure whether she feels anything toward me at all. She is content to use my services and eat my canned food. When that runs out, I don't know what will happen. I plan to be gone by then anyway. My foot feels better every day. The first afternoon she took me with her up and down the river checking her nets. She caught 3 fish, a sucker, a crappie, and a small perch. She strung these on a line attached to her belt and had me help her wade into the river and move the location of her 2 nets. Your job, she told me, will be to check my nets starting an hour before sunset every day and to bring back my fish, just like we're doing today. And let me warn you, little bitchy, never steal any of my fish or my nets. If I catch you stealing, it'll be back to the river with you. I look at her. She seemed to be serious this time. When we got back, she took old Max on her lap and loved him up again. After she was done, I took a brief turn. Bitchy, she yelled from the door, you're not done with your work today. Get in here. She instructed me how to scale and fillet the fish and remove the bones. I used to do this fishing with Dad before the cataclysm, so I was a quick study. After dark fell, she led me away from the river, across an overgrown area and into an abandoned neighborhood in Redmond. She entered a house whose door was hanging at an angle from its hinges. She used her butane lighter to light a candle, and that served as our dim source of illumination. There's a whole family of skeletons in tattered clothing lying around the living room. She ignored them and walked to the fireplace. She shoved some old newspapers as tinder under a stack of alderwood logs and lit a fire using her lighter. Working in the gloom, she went to the kitchen and brought back a dirty, scummy cooking grill which she placed over the fire. She spread the fillets on the grill and closed the glass fireplace doors. Let's go, little bitchy. We'll need to come back in about an hour to flip the fillets. I never stay in a house while I'm smoking feet. Let's go, little bitchy. We'll need to come back in a... Oh my god. Let's go, little bitchy. We'll need to come back in about a half an hour to flip... Let's go, little bitchy. We'll need to come back in about a half an hour to flip the fillets. I never stay in a house while I'm smoking fish. Degenerates can sneak up behind you. We step outside and move to some overgrown ornamental bushes where we sit down. We can still see the front door of the house where the fish is smoking. Mario looks at her lance, the pole with a knife in the end which she poked me with back at the trap. I'm wondering whether she'd use it on anyone who approached the house while the fish are cooking. Fortunately, I didn't find out that night. We didn't see any skulkers. The moon has risen. Something odd about it catches my eye. It is a little shy of a half-moon floating among the trees. The light from the orb appears to be pulsing, and the yellowish color is suffused from time to time with a rosy blush. Oh my god, the moon is experiencing a sunthrob. Then it occurs to me that I'm seeing, reflected from the face of the moon, the light of a sunthrob storm that is afflicting the world's daylight hemisphere while we are in darkness. Mario, look at that, I whisper, pointing upward. She looks at the moon and is silent for a time. Well, the poor bastards in China are broiling, she says at last. Better them than us. After the fillets were smoked, we brought them back to her residence. Marielle called out to Max, who is no longer very mobile, and carried him into the living room. There, the 3 of us shared a candlelight meal made up of previously smoked fish from Marielle's larder and 2 cans of chili from my backpack. Marielle wolfed down the chili, which probably tasted like a delicacy after her 24/7 diet of smoked fish. Marielle hand-fed Max. I wish I was the one who got to hand-feed him. Max supped very lightly on the fish, but wouldn't touch the chili that Marielle offered him. I'm worried about Max. He's not eating, Marielle said. Might be sick. He's not young anymore. Bedtime was very interesting. Marielle opened the basement door and started down the wooden steps in total darkness, carrying Max in her arms. She used a large candle for illumination, but the flame was so dim that it barely shed any light below her. Here, little bitchy, make yourself useful, she said, thrusting the candle with its holder into my hand. I sidled in front of her, taking the lead going down the stairs. We came to an underground basement door. It smelled like mildew here. The unupholstered love seat I came to was covered with black mold. Gross. The shag carpet was wet and growing mushrooms. Marielle directed me through a door to her right into her bedroom. The wet discomfort of this basement The wet discomfort of this basement is the precise reason Mariel picked this half-burned house to be her residence. Wetness is key to surviving sun throbs. If you can keep yourself under cool water and breathe through wet straw or hay, your chances of survival will go way up. Next to Mariel's trundle bed is an old sump full of water. The pump itself is long gone. Mariel told me that when a sun throb happens, she submerges Max to his neck in the sump and lies down on the wet floor next to him, covered in soaking wet blankets. She has a pile of sponges that she stores in a nearby hamper. During the sun throb, she keeps the sponges saturated by periodically dipping them into the flooded sump. She and Max breathe through the wet sponges to cool the temperature and keep the air breathable. Crude as hell and unhygienic, but she and Max have survived through most of the 21 sun throbs here while the majority of mankind perished. You'll share my bed, little bitchy, she said. Take off your stinking clothes and put them on top of that dresser. I did what she said, full of anxiety. I feel like I could never trust Mariel's intentions, or worse yet, her impulses. However, she is absolutely in charge. I must do what she tells me. Naked, I move back to the trundle bed and ease myself under covers that smell worse than my stinky clothes. The covers are damp, probably moldy with that dangerous black mold. I don't investigate. Meanwhile, Mariel placed Max on the other side of the mattress and she plopped down between us, also naked. Under the covers, with the tiny flame of the candle extinguished, I didn't know what to expect. Max started snoring right away, asleep immediately. Mariel was polite at first, probably enjoying the warmth my body generated in this cold, wet place as I was enjoying hers. As time passed, she began to stir. Her hands lightly grasped my shoulders and then one arm circled my waist. A strong leg hitched over my hip and she pulled my body easily into her naked embrace. I felt her furry crotch up against my buttocks. Here we go. I've never been raped by a woman. That's not what happened. Her sun-damaged skin rubbed against my smooth skin and one hand caressed my hair softly. I felt her breath on my neck. Her breathing was deep and regular. She was asleep. Deirdre, she moaned in an infinitely sad voice. Oh, Deirdre, she was dreaming of Deirdre, whoever Deirdre was. And that concludes Chapter 4. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time with Chapter 5.